She laughed first, not loudly, but in that way that makes people look up. And that was it. The kind of laugh that made him forget what he was supposed to be saying, or doing, or pretending not to feel. No, I hadn't planned to see her again. Not after the exhibition ended, not after the small talk that was supposed to stay small. But there she was, Elena, leaning against the long wooden table in the studio, sleeves rolled up, hair falling out of a careless bun like she'd run out of patience halfway through tying it. The evening light through the windows painted her skin in soft orange and quiet gold. She looked comfortable in that silence. He didn't. He told himself to keep it casual, just a hello, a joke, a comment about the paintings drying slower in the autumn air. But every word caught somewhere between his throat and his chest, because the room smelled like linseed oil and something gentler that reminded him of her, that faint trace of rose soap, maybe. Or maybe it was just the idea of her that carried a scent by now. "You're early," she said, eyes still on the canvas she wasn't actually painting. He shrugged. Couldn't sleep. That made her glance at him, and for a second too long, she didn't look away. It wasn't the kind of look people give each other when they're polite. It was quieter, heavier, as if they were both trying to read a sentence that had no words. He tried to fill the air with something safe. "You always work this late?" She smiled, small, curved, knowing. "Always find excuses to stay, I guess." Her tone sounded harmless, but it wasn't. He stepped closer, just enough to see the faint line of paint on her wrist. The kind of detail no one else would notice. His fingers itched to brush it away, to touch her skin just once, but he didn't. Not yet. The sound of her ring tapping against the edge of a mug broke the silence. She took a sip of coffee that must have gone cold an hour ago, pretending not to notice him watching. "You shouldn't stare like that," she said without looking up. He froze. Was I? Her lips lifted, not quite a smile, but something that lived near one. Yes. But, it's fine. That fine was the kind of word that made him dizzy, stretched too thin between meaning and restraint. He sat on the stool beside hers, elbows on his knees, trying to act like the heat between them wasn't real. But she leaned over, reaching past him to grab a brush, and the sleeve of her shirt brushed his arm. Just fabric. Just contact. And still, his pulse stuttered. Neither of them said anything after that. The clock on the wall ticked like it was waiting for one of them to slip first. She broke the quiet again. "You don't have to stay and help, Noah. I know you've got better things to do." "I don't," he said too quickly. Then softer, "I'd rather be here." She didn't answer. Only set the brush down slowly, like each second mattered. The air changed, a small shift, almost nothing, but it was enough for him to realize they were standing too close now. Close enough that if either of them breathed too deeply, the space between them would stop existing. Her eyes flicked to his mouth, just once, before she looked away. Then a sound. A knock at the studio door. Soft, but enough to pull them apart. Elena exhaled first. "You should get that," she said, even though it wasn't his studio. He turned toward the door, but before he could move, she added quietly, "Don't take too long." The knock turned out to be nothing, a delivery mix-up. But when Noah came back, Elena had already moved across the room, pretending to reorganize paint tubes that didn't need reorganizing. Something had shifted. Not broken, just moved a few inches off balance. He watched her quietly, the way her hand hesitated mid-air before picking up another brush. She wasn't as calm as she looked. Neither was he. "Who was it?" she asked, not looking up. "Wrong address." He paused. "You disappeared fast." She gave a small shrug. "Didn't want to make things awkward." "Too late," he said before he could stop himself. That made her glance at him, and in that glance, something softened. Later, when they took a break, she sat on the old couch by the window, pulling her knees up like she used to when he was still her student years ago, back when their conversations were about color theory and composition, not the ache of unfinished lives. He leaned against the wall across from her. "You ever think about leaving this place?" "Sometimes," she said. "But I never do. I guess that's my problem." There was no self-pity in her voice, just quiet fact. The kind that came from years of accepting what didn't change. You were married, right? He asked gently. She nodded. Was. A beat. He left for someone who made life feel new again. He waited. She looked at him, then really looked, and smiled like she just remembered to. Guess I'm not as new as I used to be. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because she was wrong. She didn't know how alive she looked when the light caught her hair, or how her voice sometimes trembled when she tried to sound detached. He crossed the room, slow enough to give her time to stop him. She didn't. When he sat beside her, the couch dipped slightly, tilting her closer. Their shoulders brushed. Not intentionally, but neither pulled away. The silence between them felt thick, electric. You shouldn't, she began, her voice thin. He turned to her. Shouldn't what? Look at me like that. He wanted to laugh, or maybe admit he couldn't help it. Instead, he just said, I wasn't looking at you. She smiled again, that half smile that meant she didn't believe a word of it. Her hand moved, just a small motion, almost like she was reaching for something invisible, and for a second, her fingers touched his wrist. Lightly. Barely there. But it was enough to make the rest of the room disappear. Her breath brushed his cheek when she spoke. This isn't a good idea. I know. But neither moved. Outside, rain began to tap against the window, slow and steady, filling the silence with something that sounded too much like rhythm. He thought she might pull away. Instead, she stayed, her fingers still near his, her pulse visible at her throat. And in that stillness, they both understood what they wouldn't yet say aloud, that pretending to be unbothered had stopped working the moment they started trying. The next evening, the studio was quieter than usual. Rain again, softer this time, just enough to blur the streetlights outside. Noah arrived before she did, pretending it was to clean up, but really just to feel the space she had left behind the night before. Her mug was still there, a faint smudge of lipstick on the rim. He almost touched it. When the door opened, he straightened like he'd been caught. Elena stepped in, hair damp, a few strands sticking to her temple. She looked younger like that, or maybe just unguarded. You're early again, she said, shaking the rain from her coat. He smiled. Guess I like the quiet before you show up. She froze at that, coat halfway off. A flicker of something, surprise, maybe crossed her face before she looked away. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because they sound true. They worked side by side, or at least pretended to. The smell of paint, coffee, and rain mixed in the air, too familiar now to ignore. Every time she leaned over a canvas, her sleeve brushed his arm. Every time she spoke, he could feel her breath before her words. At one point, she reached past him for a brush, and her hand landed on his forearm. It should have been nothing. But it wasn't. He looked up. So did she. The distance between them had vanished before either of them noticed. Her voice dropped, barely a whisper. This can't be, I know. Neither stepped back. Her fingers lingered on his arm a second longer than they should have. His heartbeat was too loud in the silence, loud enough that when her phone buzzed on the table, both of them jumped. The screen lit up. Lena, dinner tonight? You've been quiet lately. She snatched the phone quickly, thumb hovering over the reply. Friend, he asked. Colleague, she said too fast. Then softer, old friend. He nodded, but the word old sat between them like a warning. She set the phone down. This isn't, we can't let people see us like this. Like what? She looked up sharply, eyes full of something he couldn't name. Close. He almost said we're not. But that would have been a lie, and they both knew it. She took a step back, rubbing her hand as if to erase the touch. You're too young, Noah. People talk. Let them, he said. They already do. That made her laugh once, bitterly. You don't understand yet. They forgive boys for mistakes. They don't forgive women for wanting something they shouldn't. The honesty in her voice hit him harder than any rejection could. He moved closer, slow enough to give her time to stop him. She didn't. When he reached for the brush she still held, their hands touched again. This time, neither pulled away. The air felt too tight, too full. She whispered, "This is how it starts." He didn't answer. Because she was right, and still, neither of them moved. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, low and distant. Inside, her breath caught as if she might say his name, but before she could, the studio door creaked open. A voice called from the hallway, cheerful, unaware. She stepped back instantly, heart racing. He turned toward the door, shoulders tense. When the voice faded again and silence returned, she looked at him, really looked, and whispered, "We have to stop." But her hand was still in his. And neither of them did. For 3 days, they avoided talking about what almost happened. Work continued, words stayed safe, and the air between them grew thick enough to touch. By Thursday night, Elena was the one who broke. She stayed later than usual, pretending to clean brushes long after Noah had packed up. When she finally turned off the lights, the city outside was swallowed in mist. She didn't expect him to still be there, sitting on the steps outside the studio, put up, waiting. "You shouldn't be here," she said, half whisper, half plea. "You left your keys," he said, holding them up, but the lie was obvious. Her keys were in her bag. She sighed. "You're terrible at pretending." "So are you." That silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, pulsing, the kind that held everything they hadn't said yet. Inside, the studio was lit only by the street lamp through the blinds. The golden strips of light cut across her face, soft and sharp all at once. He watched her set her bag down, watched her take one careful breath before turning to face him. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No. But you're making it harder than it has to be." Her laugh came out tight. "You have no idea what this looks like, Noah. What it means for me." "Then tell me." Her eyes flicked to his, a flicker of fear, anger, want. "It means I'm the one who'll be judged. You'll be the one they pity." "I don't care." "Yes, you do," she said, stepping closer. "You just don't know it yet." He could smell her perfume now, faint, like something remembered. She was so close he could see the small freckle just below her jaw, the pulse moving beneath her skin. Her voice softened. "You make me forget myself. That's not something I can afford." He swallowed hard. "Then stop." "I'm trying." But she wasn't stepping back. Neither was he. When he finally reached out, it wasn't a grab, just a touch. His hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering near her temple. She froze, breath caught somewhere between defiance and surrender. "You shouldn't, I know." "Then why?" "Because you keep looking at me like you want me to." That broke her. A small, trembling inhale. Then silence. Her hand came up almost unconsciously, resting on his chest. He felt her fingers press against the fabric, felt his heartbeat jump beneath them. Her eyes searched his, as if waiting for a reason to stop. He didn't give one. The distance between them vanished. Their foreheads almost touched. Her breath hit his cheek, warm, uneven. Then footsteps in the hallway. They froze. The door handle turned. Elena's hand slipped from his chest, but her voice, soft, desperate, caught the air before she pulled away. "Noah, if you don't walk away now, I won't." The door creaked open a few inches. Neither of them moved. The door had opened that night, but no one had stepped inside. A janitor, probably. A false alarm. Still, it broke something fragile between them. For the next week, Elena barely looked at him. Noah told himself to let her have the space, to be patient. But patience started to feel like punishment. When he finally went to her apartment uninvited, half soaked from the rain, he didn't plan what to say. He just needed to see if she'd still open the door. She did. Her eyes widened for half a second, then softened into resignation. "You shouldn't be here." I know, he said. But you haven't answered my messages. I thought ignoring them might help. Did it? Her silence was answer enough. He stepped inside before she could stop him. The place smelled like turpentine and rain. Her paintings leaned half-finished against the walls, all muted blues and unfinished faces. You painted again, he said. Trying to. He nodded, noticing one canvas turned toward the wall. What about that one? She hesitated. It's nothing. He moved before she could block him. When he turned it around, his breath caught. It was him. Not perfect, rough, uncertain strokes, but him. The shape of his shoulders, the tilt of his head, the shadow under his eyes. You said it was nothing, he whispered. Her jaw tightened. Because it's a mistake. No, it's not. It is when someone else saw it. That stopped him. What? She exhaled slowly. Lena came by last night. I forgot to cover it. She asked who it was. He felt his stomach drop. And you said? I lied, she said softly. Told her it was a student study. But she knew. She always knows. He took a step closer. So she knows about us. There is no us, Noah. Her voice cracked on the word. There can't be. He wanted to argue, but the way her hand trembled as she crossed her arms stopped him. You're scared, he said quietly. I'm careful, she corrected. But when she brushed past him to move the canvas back, her arm grazed his, a small, unintentional touch that made both of them freeze. Her breath hitched. You need to go. He shook his head. Not until you tell me the truth. She turned to him, face unreadable. The truth is that I haven't been able to paint anyone else since you. The words hit him like impact. For a moment, they just stood there, her chest rising and falling too fast, his hand twitching as if to reach for her and not daring to. He stepped forward anyway, slow, deliberate. Then stop pretending you don't want this. Her eyes glistened, caught between guilt and something that looked a lot like surrender. She whispered, if I stop pretending, I won't stop at all. The air between them snapped tight. He didn't answer, just lifted a hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face the way he had before. This time, she didn't move away. And that was when the knock came, sharp, impatient, too real. Both of them froze. Elena's voice came out barely audible. That'll be her. The knock felt like thunder. Elena's breath caught mid-sentence, her hand went straight to her throat. Noah watched her, the shift from longing to fear, from open to guarded, and for the first time, he understood how much she'd been balancing on silence. Another knock. Louder. She turned to him. You have to go. Is it Lena? She nodded. Please, Noah. He hesitated. Tell her I'm nobody. You're not nobody, she said before she could stop herself. The words hung there, trembling, more confession than she meant to give. He stared at her, the rain-dark hair, the faint smear of paint on her wrist, and stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of her body pushed against the air between them. If I walk out now, he said quietly, it ends here. Her voice cracked. Maybe it should. He took another half step. You don't believe that? She didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to him, torn between the life waiting outside and the one she'd accidentally built inside this room. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a whisper. Say it's over, and I'll go. Her throat moved, but no sound came. He reached out, slow, careful, his fingers tracing the edge of her jaw. She didn't move away. The touch was barely there, but it said everything: apology, want, exhaustion. You make it hard to breathe, she whispered. He almost smiled. You make it worth trying. Her eyes closed for a moment, just long enough for him to see the battle play out in her face. I can't be the mistake you have to forget, she said. You're not, he murmured. You're the reason I remember anything at all. Her breath caught again, shallow and uneven. The nearness between them pulsed, not safe, not right, but undeniable. She lifted her hand, fingers brushing his collar, as if steadying herself. "If I let this happen," she said softly, "everything changes." It already has. That broke her stillness. She looked up, eyes searching his, then took a step closer, so close now that the next breath would undo them both. He leaned in just slightly, waiting, giving her the choice. And then, somewhere in the hall, footsteps faded away. The world outside moved on. Inside, neither spoke. Her hand slid from his collar to his chest. His heartbeat thudded beneath her palm. For a long, fragile moment, they just stood there, suspended between restraint and surrender, both knowing exactly what the other felt. Then she exhaled. "If I'm wrong about this," he met her eyes. "Then we'll both be wrong." Her lips parted, not a smile, not yet, but something softer. Acceptance, maybe. When their foreheads finally touched, it wasn't a kiss. Not yet. Just the truth, breathing between them. And for once, neither of them tried to act unbothered. Morning came slow, the kind that forgets to be bright. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the streets silver and clean. Inside the studio, everything was still. The brushes, the canvases, the unfinished moments, all exactly where they'd left them. Elena stood by the window, arms crossed loosely, hair loose from sleep. She hadn't meant to fall asleep there on the couch, head against his shoulder. But Noah hadn't moved, not once. He just sat with her, quiet, awake, watching the city turn pale behind the glass. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft enough that he almost missed it. "You should probably be somewhere else by now." He smiled, faint but real. "Probably." She turned to look at him, the exhaustion around his eyes, the calm that wasn't there before. "And you're not?" No, the answer came easy this time. No hesitation, no performance. Just truth. She looked down at her hands. The faint smudge of paint still on her skin made her laugh quietly. "I used to think I was past this kind of thing." "What kind of thing?" "Feeling something that scares me." He reached for her hand, slow, steady, not asking, not rushing. When his fingers slid between hers, she didn't pull away. "Maybe that's what makes it real," he said. For a long while, they just stood there like that. No words, no overthinking, just the steady rhythm of two people who'd finally stopped pretending they weren't drawn to each other. Elena broke the silence. "People will talk." "They already do," he said again, a small echo of his old defiance. But his voice was gentler now. "Let them. We'll figure it out." She studied him, really seeing him, not the younger man who'd walked into her class years ago, but the one standing here now, steady in the morning light. "You don't know what you're getting into." He squeezed her hand. "Neither do you." That earned him a soft laugh, the kind she hadn't used in a long time. When she leaned against him, her head finding its place beneath his chin, it didn't feel like surrender. It felt like honesty. He rested his chin lightly on her hair. "You know," he said, "if someone had told me this is where I'd end up, you wouldn't have believed them?" He smiled. "No. But I think I would have hoped for it." Her fingers tightened around his. "Then maybe we both stopped running at the right time." Outside, the light warmed the walls, soft and golden, the same color that had once spilled across her skin that first night he saw her again. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The quiet between them said enough. Elena finally whispered, "So what now?" He looked down at her, his voice low, certain. "Now we stop pretending." And when she lifted her head, their foreheads touched again, the same way it had all started, but this time, neither pulled away. "Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?"